and welcome to News from the Pew, where we take news from around the interwebs and distill it down to make it slightly less frightening. I am your host, Rick Barrett, and I am joined by my panel, as always, Mr. Steve Cunningham from Census Fidelium and censusfidelium.tv. Go check that out. Coming to us from Florida, Mr. Jonathan Arrington. We are always happy to have Jonathan with us. And, of course, Fawaz Yazi from Kentucky, who is busy promoting every single Catholic artist he can find. And if you haven't been promoted by him, give him time. He will find you, because that is his goal right now. But that's awesome too, because he's exposing people to a lot of some really great artists that don't get the attention they deserve. So you definitely got to follow him on his Instagram page, Enoch Catholic Kings, and you'll get some great stuff there. But gentlemen, always good to have you on. So we'll get right into our first story here, which will be talking about, which one was the first one, Steve? I completely forgot already.
I lost it too.
All right. So our first story. Oh, it's Liz Truss, because it's the shortest story.
Quick.
Yeah, it's the quick. It was the shortest story. That's why. So Liz Truss, in case you don't know who she is, she was the former prime minister of the UK. And I say former because she was elected 45 days ago, and she just resigned today, making it 45 days, which is 27 days shorter than the Kardashians' shortest marriage, Kim Kardashian. She was married for 72 days, but Liz Truss couldn't push it over 50 days, which I don't know. I think that's a pretty funny statistic.
Why do you know that?
What?
Why do you know that?
Because Twitter, my friend. And I guess I'm outing myself as a back in the day Kardashian watcher before my conversion, before coming back to the faith.
Things we know about each other, but we don't want to know.
No. Well, you're the one that pressed the issue, so there we go in that one.
I'll take ownership on that fault.
That's what we call that. That's on you, brother. So we have that. Do we have any video accompanying that? Do we, Steve?
I got Nigel.
All right, let's listen to Nigel Farage talk about this spectacular run of Liz Truss.
12 years, we've had 12 years of Tory misrule. Let's have a think about the economy, shall we? Low growth, productivity now so low, it's estimated to be 20% below that of France. I mean, it almost beggars belief, but then that's what you get when you have huge open door immigration to low skilled labour. Through their economic policy of quantitative easing, they've pushed up the price of assets, houses. So if you're rich and you own several houses, this has been really, really cool. If you're one of the many millions who wants to get on the housing ladder, well, I'm sorry, but having a house is no longer for you. And linked to that, of course, is the cost of living crisis, the biggest single cost being energy. This is all a totally self-inflicted wound by a Conservative Party who completely turned their backs on the idea of us being energy independent. No, we build lots of windmills and we import electricity when the wind doesn't blow. It comes in from France, it comes in from Norway. Oh, and by the way, the Tories have also closed down our gas storage facility so that this winter we will have about 2 days reserve of gas, and the lights may well go out in February. Immigration, legal immigration, well, our population's increased by about 10 million since the year 2000. Makes almost no difference whether it's the Blair era or whether it's Cameron, May, or any of the others. It's tough to keep up with all the names, isn't it? What with 4 chancellors in 4 months. And across the channel, which I've been warning about repeatedly for the last 2 years, well, Border Force wrote to the Home Secretary at the weekend to say the reception centre at Manston is now full of, and I quote, violent criminals. Yes, hundreds of violent criminals are coming into this country every single week. Law and order, don't even get me started. Crime is now so bad that most people don't even bother to report crime, don't even bother to get in touch with the police. Our armed forces, since 2010, slashed, and all of this from a government that says it is conservative. Well, there was a brief glimmer of hope that perhaps we'd try and reduce the size of the state, perhaps we'd try and get taxes down, but it wasn't to be. No, I also had hoped that the IR35 rules might be changed because that is frankly a war on the self-employed. But no, now we have Jeremy Hunt. Oh, isn't that just great? Pro the Chinese Communist Party, pro the European Union, pro lockdown, pro mandatory vaccination. I mean, frankly, he may just as well be a Labour politician. This is a globalist coup. Now, if Labour were in power, their economic policies would be virtually identical. Some of the social stuff might be a little bit crazier, a little bit madder, but it would make no difference. I fail to see right now what the point of the Conservative Party is. I don't even know what function it serves. And I'm saying this, all of this to you as we drive along Whitehall past number 10 Downing Street. There we are, that's Downing Street there. I understand they put in a revolving door because Liz Truss won't last very long. But anyway, she's not running the country. Mr. Hunt and the globalists are. There is no point to this Conservative Party. It might have existed for 200 years. It now serves no purpose. It needs desperately to be replaced. Quite how we do that under a first past the post system is something I'm going to turn my mind to. Be sure of one thing, the Conservative Party, as we've always known it, is now dead.
Very interesting. So we complain about our politicians here in these United States of Amazon not get much better anywhere else. Jonathan, the whole point of, because we hear conservative and Tory, I don't even know the difference between the two of them, but it's very much the way we think of it here as a conservative versus liberal. There's, as Nigel was saying in there, there's not much of a difference between the two. So what are the people in England to do with that?
Well, if they ever return to their Catholic faith, they might think to ask, where do we get these two so-called options? And like Chris Ferrara's great book that I was just thumbing through back here somewhere on the liberal order that democracy, the God that failed, effectively, is the Catholic viewpoint is that when you are for a revolution, especially a revolution not just against the current political authority, but against the natural order and against God himself, clearly as the Anglicans were. And then, I mean, we kind of are their inheritors here in the U.S. No matter what, some folks want to say about a putative biblical founding of the U.S., we follow right in the U.K.'s footsteps and have really from day one, even after the so-called revolution. But when you revolt against God, I mean, you get these kind of bifurcations, these two options, and then which one are you going to choose? I mean, bad and worse. I mean, morally, you're really strained to choose one or the other, as we've talked about, together on this show a lot. But something about the modern era that seems to be coming up that maybe it wasn't as visible in the earlier days of the revolution there in England and also here in the U.S. is just how unstable these things are, right? I mean, if you've got, like St. Augustine talks about in his On the City of God, if you've got the libido dominandi, the desire, just the burning desire, the sort that St. Paul describes in the New Testament, to dominate others, to have power over others, to exercise your power over others, as as prophesied in Genesis 3 already, then you can just expect to see revolution after revolution after revolution. And I mean, to kind of get to the point that Nigel Farage, I think, actually enunciates pretty well there, there's a lack of stability, right? Because there's no commitment to any sort of end, any sort of goal in sight that anyone dares to enunciate, because you're going to be called a racist or a fascist or whatever the new word of the day is, a Nazi. But you're not going to have any stability, and you can't really have any sort of authentic, consistent and authentic human development when there's just revolution after revolution and no stability. I mean, even St. Thomas says that, before you change a law, you think you're going to change a law to be something good. Just make sure you're not going to cause more harm with the change, because it's always a certain sort of revolution. Even when you're changing to something that's better, you have to make sure it's not going to upset the public order more than it warrants. Given whatever the sort of legal change you might make. Yes, I mean, here you get it just too short of a time, and so people can't even get accustomed to it.
Absolutely. That's a great point there. So Fawaz, you have the constant turmoil that's going over there. You heard the statistics that Nigel was firing off about armed forces and crime and all these other things. And of course, John made a great point about the fact that, the English have been in revolt since Henry VIII. That what is the natural course of action for people in that country? I asked John that, the natural course of action, but also what is somebody to do going forward if they live there?
That's a good question, and it's good to be with you guys again.
Um, well, like Nigel said, I agree with him. There's absolutely zero purpose of this conservative party. There's actually no purpose of the current definition of conservatism anywhere in the world. You don't really have somebody, because in order to conserve, you must conserve what? The natural law in order the way God intended. And since human beings are fixed in a certain way, we're wired a certain way, um, policy across the world, no matter what country you're in, needs to reflect that that certain cultivating of bringing human beings into more of a virtuous society. And that's the whole point of politics, is to cultivate virtue within policy. And unfortunately, because throughout the years, my sins, our sins, sins across the world, um, sin makes us really stupid. And since sin makes us stupid, we become so attached to a certain understanding of I guess what we call it, dopamine, or just hopism. And what ends up happening is we went into what's called elected democracy, which in theory, if you had a virtuous society, it could work if you had a certain number of people who have some common sense and sanity, that are electing the leaders. You're going to have common sense and sane leaders. But what we have is leaders that come out every few years and say, look, here's free candy. And everyone's like, we like candy, so we're going to vote for this guy. And, and she was elected, but really what the parliament really wanted this whole time is, what is she different than Boris Johnson? Is might as well just have Boris Johnson back and just keep the status quo. There was absolutely no different. All of this, I think, is leading up to one thing. There's really no, it's a lot of it is just stopping the inevitable from happening. She's a WEF. Steve talks about that. I think all of this is leading up to one final event. In my personal opinion, is we will eventually have the great monarch in Europe, and that's a prophecy that I believe that even the early church fathers talked about. It might be prophesied in scripture. I don't know if it's Daniel or not, but there will be a great monarch that will rise up and reclaim the Catholic roots of Europe. But unfortunately, right now, all we can do is suffer through the dark tunnel before we see that light. And God is guiding the train. And so my advice to anybody in the world, even in UK, is you just gotta cultivate virtue. You've got to be holy. Get your sacraments as best as you can. Raise your family as Catholic as possible, because when it does hit the fan, we're going to have a problem of, it's going to be painful, it's going to hurt, but the light at the end of the tunnel is, this is all leading up to the great monarch coming in, and we can enjoy some of that peace. We might not see it, but maybe our kids will.
Absolutely. Fwaz teed you up, Steve. She's a WEF girl. Nigel mentioned it too. She's a WEF puppet. Par for the course, just cause more chaos and instability there.
Yeah, Liz is a WEF girl, and guess who is also? Hunt. Hunt, as Bernie's tweets comes out with the Hunt appointed 4 bankers to his economic advisory committee, all with links to the WEF and all back in the Great Reset. Not one advisor has worked in the business that produces anything at all. They simply feed off the back of others. Here they are: Rupert Harrison, ex-BlackRock; Karen Ward, JP Asset Management; Jurgen something, Speaker of Davos; Sushil Wanawani. I feel like that movie Office Space. Not going to work here anymore. Speaker of Davos. It's what Jonathan brought up too about the libido dominandi and the want to rule over others. That's what we're getting. You see that with Biden coming out and say, well, here's a clip of that.
A challenge, but we see an opportunity, a real opportunity, to shift to a net zero sum carbon world in one of the most significant economic transitions since the Industrial Revolution. That's not hyperbole, that's a fact. We're also confronting it head on with American ingenuity and American jobs. That's why my infrastructure law invested over $7 billion in battery supply chains that are going to bolster U.S. capacity for processing, manufacturing, and recycling critical minerals like lithium, nickel, and graphite.
All produced by slave labor. So it's okay when we do it.
And that's why today I'm proud to announce $2.8 billion in awards to 20 companies represented on this screen
All
across
Democratic
12
donors.
states funded by the infrastructure law to build electric vehicles in a battery future here in America. Nearly
Never gonna
200
happen.
companies applied for these grants. Only 20 were selected, from Georgia to North Carolina to Nevada to the state of Washington. We have awarded this funding, and we've asked companies how they're going to partner with community colleges, minority-serving institutions.
All right, enough, Brandon. But you see what it's going to be. There, we're going to tell you what's good for you. You serfs, just shut up and do it. And if and I brought up last week, Jonathan wasn't here for it, and I told him, hey man, I brought up that link that you sent about CJ. Brought up now. There's some good stuff in the book that Matthias Desmond writes on. One of them being, they want revolution. They want you to react. You see right now, France is protesting. Germany's still protesting. Italy, everywhere in Europe right now is there's protests in the streets because of high energy costs and the threat of being cut off, which is going to happen. Germany has already come out saying cities need to come out with places to warm you, keep you warm. You heard Nigel talk about they don't have enough the backup supply. You see Brandon over here depleting another million. What is it, 15 million that he got rid of yesterday? Depletion of the oil reserves. When he tried to get rid of the oil, get rid of the gas, so that you don't have any of that, so that you serfs will be freezing cold during that net zero garbage. Is he going to kill everyone? Because that's how you get the net zero without killing humans. Because we exhale CO2. That's just fact. Animals inhale O2, exhale CO2. To get the net zero is literally impossible unless you get rid of people and animals. They're trying to get rid of the animals. They want you to eat what they want you to eat. If you saw the Hunger Games, they're the capital and you're the districts. And if you rise up, they will eliminate you somehow. And they want that to happen. They want you to rise up because martial law comes in after that. Now it goes into Garanger writes about what is the Catholic response to this. It's not we're not a protesting people. We're not a rising up people. We're a penance and prayer people. So yes, in a sense, there is that way. You look at people like was it Strawbringer? How you pronounce his name? Valkyrie, Operation Valkyrie. He did a just war theory. How do we get rid of a tyrannicide? And he went through the right process to go about this. Now, I'm not saying that's the way we need to do it. I'm just saying that, in a way, down the road, if it gets as bad as people think that it can get, CBDC, social credit scores, which started a trial act, today's the 20th? It happened 30th of September, so 30 days ago. Maybe I miscounted that.
20 days.
20 something days ago. I got a baby and I have no sleep. I can't do math anymore. So that's going to come in. That's not going to go away. 6 federal banks are using that. You don't get that. If you think it's programmable money, they can tell you when you can use it, when not to use it, how much you're supposed to use. And if you don't use it in a certain period, they take it away. And oh, by the way, if you don't have a social credit score up to par, say, oh, you went to a protest or you went to a rally or you went to vote for this guy or you said this on a social media site, you might not be paying for chewing gum that week, much less paying for your bill and getting energy in there. And if people think that's far out of the realm of possibility, remember 2 years ago, they shut the planet down and they said this was all about climate change or climate crisis. And they're just going through an open conspiracy, as George Orwell's talked about or wrote about, open conspiracy right in your face that you can't see that, or you think it's Looney Tunes things. Look at what's going on now. They're trying in Australia in the summer. They're talking about high cases going on of the Rona coming back up. They're already warning about that in Canada, warning Trudeau saying new restrictions coming out if you don't get the boost, your 48th booster and the flu shot. Now, pray tell me, I thought the colder flu season is in when it gets cold out. Isn't Australia summertime coming up now or December? They're warning about December cases rising. How does that happen in the non-cold and flu season? And that's Australian reporting that. My mind starts going on things like this. This is all planned. And if you can't if you see these connections right here, you'll be able to, I don't know, keep some peace about it, going, okay, well, I saw that we knew this was coming. Well, so I keep on going with Jocko's thing about military. He says the worst thing that happened that a person in a war or combat is when an ordnance is shot at them and they have no idea where that thing is going to land. How do you think about that? You don't have a clue, so you got to wait for that thing to come down. Hopefully, it's not on you. So instead of playing on defense, you got to be on the offense once in our lives. Church, state, everything. So instead of worrying about, hey, what are we going to do if we can't drive our car to go to mass, better start to be thinking about that and get closer to a parish. What if it doesn't happen? Okay, you're good. You're still close to a parish. But what if it does? And you're 30 minutes away from a parish, or you're out in the sticks and you have nowhere to get to a parish. Your neighbors aren't close by to you, and you don't know how to grow your own food. You're not going to survive too long. So you got to get the off instead of sitting back worrying about stupid liturgical wars on Twitter, calling about who's the Pope and who's not the Pope, and other stupid things that we can think about for 24/7. Start thinking about things that could maybe keep you surviving a little bit, maybe increase your holiness on the way too. I don't know, just some thoughts on that. You guys hit some good points too.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. Thank you for allowing us to join you in that question.
I don't know.
But you ask real quick about the currency stuff. People need to realize that we're already in our third quarter of negative growth, and that your total credit worldwide is about like 350 trillion. And the derivatives on that push it to 2 quadrillion. The numbers we're talking about here. And once the only thing is that place has only one path, and that's down. We've already seen the housing market starting to crash a little bit. People are not acknowledging it, but it's happening. And all of that is a wipeout to set up what Steve's been talking about for a while, which is the central digital bank currency and the tokenized assets and all these other kinds of things.
This was 15 days ago.
So the whole point is not to scare you, but if you have assets that you can deploy as far as food or things like that, it may be time to actually put those things into action.
Well, Jonathan's in Florida. When you have a hurricane and we're in South Carolina, the coast people will go, "Hey, there's a hurricane coming. What do?"
I just go to the shore and look.
You board up the house, you get some beers at the house, you load up on the necessities and things like that. You don't go, that's a conspiracy theorist. There ain't nothing coming this way. Now, that guy's the one swimming in the river afterwards.
Exactly. But yeah, that is definitely something to keep in mind as we see this stuff started to take place. Everybody said the market's going to crash and stuff, and they were looked at as crazy. There's only so much money that can be printed. I think there's 31 trillion in debt at this point. Just the numbers they're willing to admit. All this stuff. Oh yeah, all this stuff has to go one place, and that's down. So just keep your eyes out, ladies and gentlemen, for it, and get ready for that. But to something more immediate, the last couple days, the CDC has met, and they have decided, in their wisdom, that they now want to have the COVID vaccine, the magic jab, included in your child's yearly vaccinations to attend the grandeur that is public school. And this was a natural thing to happen, ladies and gentlemen. The CDC cannot backtrack. The CDC cannot admit fault, because if they do, then everything from the last couple years will just be egg on their face. And so let's play the clips and we'll move on to the panel.
An update that we think is important on a story we told you about last night. The CDC Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices was on the verge of adding the COVID vaccine to the childhood immunization schedule. That vote is scheduled for tomorrow. Now, as we said, if that vote
tomorrow, that was yesterday, today comes today,
passes, children will be forced to take the shot they do not need, no scientific basis for acquiring it, and the shot that could hurt them. They have to take that shot in order to be educated in the United States in a public school. Well, in response to our segment, the CDC complained on Twitter. They claimed that states and not the CDC establish vaccine requirements for school children. But like so much else that we have heard from the CDC, and it pains us to say this, but it's true. Like so much else they have told us over the last 2 years, they're lying. And they know they're lying. More than a dozen states follow the CDC's immunization schedule to set vaccination requirements, not suggestions, requirements for children to be educated. For example, the Virginia Department of Health states that, quote, vaccines must be administered in accordance with the CDC schedule. The state of Massachusetts says, quote, no student shall attend a preschool, elementary school, or secondary school program without a certificate of immunization documenting that a child has been successfully immunized in accordance with a schedule that was, quote, developed in accordance with the recommendations of the CDC's advisory panel. Tennessee says its immunization requirement, quote, follow the current schedule from the CDC. New Jersey, Vermont, Ohio say virtually the same thing. We could go on. The point is the CDC sets the standard, and then it becomes required across the country. And of course, they know that. Of course they know that. If they know anything, they know that. So we called the CDC and asked a simple question. Do you deny that once the COVID vaccine is added to the childhood immunization schedule, many schools and states will require it based on your recommendation? And of course, they know that's true. We caught them lying, so they didn't even bother to respond to us because apparently we're not American citizens.
Going to market a vaccine, allow people access to a vaccine, an approved vaccine, without getting liability protection. Now, the emergency use authorization vaccines have liability protection under the PrEP Act and the CARES Act. So as long as you take an emergency use, you can't sue them. Once they get approved, now you can sue them, unless they can get it recommended for children.
What?
Because all vaccines that are recommended, officially recommended for children, get liability protection, even if an adult gets that vaccine. That's why they're going after kids. They know this is going to kill and injure a huge number of children, but they need to do it for the liability protection.
Questions to our office about the CDC potentially adding COVID vaccine to the childhood immunization schedule. And I know a lot of parents are concerned about that because if that's on the immunization schedule, the fear is that schools could potentially mandate your child to get a COVID shot, even if that's not something that you want to do. So I just want to let everyone be clear, as long as I'm around and as long as I'm kicking and screaming, there will be no COVID shot mandates for your kids. That is your decision. That is your decision to make as a parent. These are new shots. I get a kick out of when people kind of compare it to MMR and stuff, things that have been around for decades.
Well, there's questions about the older ones too, but we won't get into that. We won't get into that here. But Tucker's right. But Tucker misses the point that yes, those states require it. But let's say, and I want to see Florida do this. Florida says they're not going to. But who does the federal government have? The federal government has the Department of Education. Department of Education, which I did not pass well. The Department of Education gives out lots of money in the form of grants, folks. You don't have the faintest idea of the amount of grants that are sent out to local schools, Title I, whether it's school lunch, attendance bonuses, the amount of money that funds public schools via the federal government ensures that many states will fall in line. Of course, John, the question becomes, why would you even send your kid to a public school at this point? But we still have many red-blooded conservatives trying to fight for public schools, despite the fact that it is an arm of the federal government. It is a product of the federal government. It is not your local school board. So people keep fighting for it, though.
Yeah, and from all of what you said, spot on, Rick. I mean, barely anything I can add to that, except to say that just locally, well, with you guys probably call me out for calling this local, but I should say nationally. In the U.S., there have I mean, you're never going to have a perfect human element of the church, but the Catholic Church in the U.S. was really strong when we had good Catholic school options. And I mean, effectively, the downfall for the U.S. church, at least, is really occasioned by not having good Catholic school options. And you see, for all their other, and just gotten a big brouhaha about Catholic school options recently, but the fact does remain that when there's a good Catholic school option that you can send your kids to, those kids usually end up much better off than if they go to any sort of public school, even, watch out for flying objects, but even to a, otherwise a little bit better than the local public school, charter school, because, when you just think about it, you're spending 40 plus, and a lot of times, I mean, we're talking about way more than 40, but 40 plus hours a week in a place, and that's going to form your mentality and how you view the rest of life. And like with television, this was one of the big things with television. Oh, wholesome show. When do they go to mass in the show? Is that not the source and summit of the faith, as Vatican II even calls it? And yet that's not going to be in the show. So like with TV, it just habituates you without you even really paying much attention to it and perhaps perceiving it at first. The schools do that. And so I would, as horrible as this is, and it is truly horrible what they've done today. And, Robert Kennedy's been on this more than anybody else, or just as well as anybody else. The real harm is the spiritual harm, because, people, nobody's really talking about that. I mean, at least we've got DeSantis here in Florida, thanks be to God, talking about the physical ill effects, which are bad and which will, put an extra psychological load on people that will make life very, very hard for people that will be beset with the illnesses that will follow in the wake of this. But the biggest problem is that the public schools have always removed God, in a way that they should not have.
Yeah, it's absolutely that's, one could argue, with the Industrial Revolution, the training of students to be good little factory workers, and then they became obsolete when factories became obsolete because they all got shipped overseas. The primary purpose of public schooling was to separate kids from families, because flaws that back in the day, even if you had the little school in the middle of town, it was couple parents coming through, and maybe you had one teacher teaching
Right.
multiple subjects. But then the kids were like, I'm going home to work on the farm the rest of the day, or I'm going to, when summer was out, summer was not so your kids could go to the YMCA and do all this other stuff. It was like, hey, kid, I'm glad you passed your math class. Now go pick the field because we got crops to get. So
Right.
the Industrial Revolution with the modern school, separate kids from family, keep kids 40 hours a week with these random people that are certified to be educators, and you don't know what they're doing. And then all of a sudden, these kids have another influence instead of their parents.
That's what happened in the background. Rick got a lot of pumpkin pickers after class.
It's all part of my pumpkin empire. Don't you worry about it.
Yeah. Once again, Jonathan and Rick, you guys are on point. I mean, Robert he made an excellent point. And it's kind of funny because you started to see, I don't know if you guys saw this, but I was kind of catching a glimpse of it. You're starting to see a little bit of a backlash you see a lot of young folks are just dying suddenly. And there's this 80%. And then that number came out with the general, what was it? Medical General Florida, the African-American guy. He came out and he said, well, these are killing young folks. And because there's a liability here, because, Biden always talks about name any other industry that is immune from liability, and then the gun industry. Well, hello, big pharma. But what the last 2 years I think it's done is it's gotten those people who rage against the machine to become puppets of the very machine that they were raging against before 2020. Because now you got leftists who are so anti-big pharma are now all of a sudden cheering for big pharma. So it goes to show you that they're just so brainwashed into this. But you're right, Rick. Because even if we went back 100 years ago, the default is landing here, because you got to change the root. You can't just change the symptom. The problem is we had the Industrial Revolution, which had some pluses, but of course, like everything else, it also has its minus negativity. It's led us here. So I go back to the so-called conservative movement. It's like, let's conserve. Well, if you take us back to 50 years ago, 50 years later, we're going to land right where we are right now, because if we just go back to default, this is the natural progression of where we were headed. And you could pull, and Robert was right when he said that he's been doing this research
for years and years, and he's been fighting back against parental right when it comes to vaccines. I know Carrie Lake said the same thing about the states. I know the one running for Kentucky governor next year has also said the same thing. She's like, this is up to parents, not up to schools. But you're right, Rick. They have a federal hand that they could push, which is the state of education, the Secretary of Education. Now, the solution, I guess, would be the solution right now is to pull as many kids out of school as possible. But all that's going to do is they're just going to turn around. See, this is the problem with people who are in power. This is the problem with our elected democracy, is when you elect these people to power, as soon as they start to lose something, they just change the rules because they have the power to do so, and then you just have to comply. Because if you pull a bunch of kids out of school, they just let another law saying, okay, now this applies to homeschool too. So boom, you're done. I think in order to get people to fight back in a way to kind of resist this, is we've seen this. Their children in school don't matter. You got to stop. You got to stop people from watching football every Sunday. You have to vaccinate them to watch football. Then we'll see an uprising from this couch sitting, potato chip eating society who cares more about Sunday football and burning their, because somebody took a kneel. While 50 years of brainwashing our children, that's okay, but just don't take my football away. And this is absolutely horrible what we've seen. I'm kind of fed up with it, to be honest with you. Again, it's a natural progression. This is going to lead to where it's going to lead. God is going to allow it. We just got to face. We just got to put our seatbelts on, and hopefully we don't go through the window in the crash at this point.
Absolutely. Good point. I mean, when you even have, and I'm not a fan of hers by any means, but you even have Megyn Kelly coming out saying that this is, an uncharacterized, a scary amount of people, young people are dying after taking the COVID vax. It becomes this point, Steve, where, like you rolling in with everything else. If your kids don't get the shot, then guess what? They're not up to par. They can't go places. They can't do things. It's all part of this. And the CDC, despite the fact that people are questioning the sudden emergence of sudden adult death syndrome, which was just kind of weird when they're like, oh yeah, by the way, this thing exists now. It never existed before. It's like, yeah, by the way, if you're a young adult and you die, that's your fault. That's not on us. Right. And
you mind if I add one more thing? Sorry, buddy. I want to add one more thing. Here, I'm gonna keep it very short because I know Steve wants to go. And here's the thing: there is no, I guess, when it comes to moral theology and understanding and cultivating virtue in the sanctification process, there really is no face of Catholicism in the world. To be honest with you, where's the face? Because you're not getting it from the Vatican. You're not getting it from our leaders, from our bishops and our cardinals. They're not saying to people, this is how you build virtue. This is how you build a great society. This is how you sanctify your family and yourselves. It's all about social work and social justice. So if you had every Catholic across the whole world, if we had the traditional understanding of how to grow in virtue and how to be holy, like St. Alphonsus taught, or St. De Sales or John of the Cross, if we had that, we had holy people, we would all be on our knees, and these things could change quickly because we would rely on God, call on headquarters. But we're all trying to fix it by saying, hey, governor, can you fix this for me? So I agree with Steve. There needs to be more people on their knees praying than out there picketing.
We do have somebody. We have Steve Cunningham. That is the face right there. Look at that little face right there. That's the face right there of Catholicism.
This is
showing us the way. Steve, the whole point that the CDC had to double down. People thought, whoever thought the COVID shot was going away, you got to be foolish. Of course they were going to double down on it.
Well, I remember people saying after the 2020 election, the Rona's going to be gone. And I'm sitting there laughing, going, you guys are out of your mind. Because everyone's this, and Fawaz brought it up earlier about hopium. Everyone had this hopium going through their veins. And the CDC, if you get the book, The Real Anthony Fauci, he talks about how the CDC was trying to find a way to even exist. They were useless at the time. And then some guy named Tony Fauci, a Jesuit educated, not Jesuit, not the Catholic anymore guy, decides to come in and turns HIV into a multi-million-dollar industry, killed off everybody but Magic Johnson, who was smart enough to figure out not to take the drugs. And there we got the CDC now making it, basically ruling the world. As Jonathan brought up before, power the rule. Their libido dominante is off the charts. And the vote yesterday was 15-0. Basically, that was for allowing the kids that weren't on insurance or have no insurance to be able to get these jabs, which goes back to that eugenics thinking and going, what are they trying to do? They're trying to kill babies. They're trying to get rid of this. And there's something just that they're getting rid of the food supply. Hey, mine in the back, what are they doing to us, or what are they wanting to do? It looks like it's like that cow meme. Hey, they're just wanting us to go in this little thing over there. Now they're trying to cut us up. Anyways, for what I was brought up a point about the football guy, if they did football, I don't think they would do anything. There's so many people, and CJ brought that up in his article. Matthias brings up everyone's hypnotized. They wake up. You hear that all the time. The wake up idea. We got to wake these people up. Well, wake up from what? They're awake. They don't have the guts to say no. They don't have the spine to say no. You hand them a muzzle and say, you wear this or you're going to be fired. How many people said, all right, I'm putting that thing on. I'll put 2 on. What do you want? 3? Okay, sure. You want me to jump around in this dress? Yeah, sure. Just to keep a job. And I mentioned that in our shows, my show a couple years ago, that people that are going to do that won't have the ability. I feel like Porky Pig. Be able to say no to the vax. So what's going to happen? You're going to see people. Yeah, sure. There's going to be some states like Florida go say no to the jabs. But even if the states did, if the schools were pushing it, how many people are going to say, no, my kid's not going to do it? Guarantee 80% or more are going to let their kid get jabbed on. Then they're going to go, what happened? Why did the kid get sick? Why he died? Not going to be able to sue over that. It goes back to the 1986 bill that Ronald Reagan shoved through, the act. There's actually a documentary on that thing. It's called the 1986, The Act. They crossed out 1984 for it. Just like with the jabs, if they told somebody that do you have to watch a game on that, I guarantee majority SEC football fans would line up and pull their arms up so they can get in that stadium. CJ brings it up because it's totalitarianism won the day on this. They didn't. There's nobody asleep. There's nobody, hypnotized or anything like that. Matthias comes out saying that you can get a heart transplant, break their bones open, and he saw it because they were hypnotized without anesthesia. And he comes out that was a lie. So this is just people trying to survive. People are gonna, the ones that stand up. CJ brings it up. Those are the ones that are going to be in front of this firing squad. So you got a choice on no or yes. And that's coming up for what's coming on the regulations, the social credit scores, all the CBDC. It's going to be a time you're going to say, do I eat or do I play the game? And it's knowing me, I'm scared on that because I know I'm not one to play the game. And I got to get it through my other half, and I got to look at the kids and figure out what's the best way to do this. Now, if we're in the outskirts, I don't think they're going to care about us because that's definitely going to be in the cities. But again, goes back to, you can be able to drive. Are you going to be able to get food? Are you able to go to the places? Are you going to be able to get the most important thing, as Jonathan brought up about the TVs, places of worship. You're trying to go to mass, go to confession. Because who cares? There's one monk in New Zealand, one of my Redemptorist friends said, who cares about the body in the sense, if your body is perfect and top notch, but you're in the state of the real plague of sin, mortal sin, you go to hell for all your life. Oh, great. You're in physical, great peak condition, burning in hell for all eternity. Wonderful. Woohoo. But if you're not, and you do get the confession and you're not, maybe you aren't that healthy. Maybe you don't eat that well. Maybe you are eating, wherever you can find. And kind of like the movie with Stallone and
Demolition Man eating the rat burgers,
living under streets. Yeah, maybe you're those guys. But if they're going to mass every day, their soul's perfect. That's the main thing we got. You see all the most important thing. Election is the most important thing. No, I mean it's good. It isn't important. It's not the most. This guy doing this, the poison of our food. Yes, that's bad. But is your soul getting poisoned? So we're still thinking worldly. Even trad Catholics are definitely a problem on that. Worldly, and not thinking about the earthly, eternal things as well. How many people read all the sexy blogs, but not reading maybe a scripture passage a day or Garange a day or book of the Lives of the Saints every day? But we're all up on par on what everyone else doing. Hey, yeah, I'm doing that too. but I'm also putting together 6 or 7 videos a day, reading Garanger a day, putting all this up a day, reading 4 or 5 books a day, and then looking at political stuff. So it's not taking up my whole thing. It's not the only thing I'm focused on. So, and I'm also doing that so you don't have to do that. So,
so you're contributing to the problem, Steve.
I know. I probably am part of the problem.
You're making it too easy for the rest of us.
But no, I think that when the CDC pushes this out, it's going to be a state thing, which federalism is supposed to be. But the CDC, people do whatever the CDC says. But it's going to be, that's what we need, is states to take over, states to be states, states to get out, divorce this tyrannical union. I did that podcast with Tom Woods the other day. I'm talking exactly about this. Are you a Hobbes-minded thinking? Top down, vote all down. There was a video that Peter, who was on the show a couple weeks ago, did a year ago. I think Jonathan watched it. I watched a little bit of it, and I'm surprised I didn't hear about it beforehand. And it talks about how most of the track guys too, it was all top down, hopium on Trump. And we're just going to, what's that guy? The Jack Pozaski or whatever his name is. Bannon. All those guys that talk Trump. We got to take back to the White House. I got my milk yesterday, and the lady goes, "If we don't win the election in November, it's all done." I go, "It's all done anyways." You think a vote on in next month is changing what this is? Hey, you got to be. It's this. Where do you get this mindset that, hey, if we just check off a vote, that most people don't even have a clue what's going on in the vote? There was that video of kids in some college, and they in Texas, and they go their vote for.
Oh Beto. Yeah, that was at Austin. That was at UT Austin about Beto.
No clue. They couldn't even give a rational reason why to vote for the guy, but they're going to vote for him anyways. Hey, most of the Democrats are running on abortion. You got Biden out there pushing a federal law on abortion, and you got Graham trying to put a federal law against abortion. You got the March for Life, still marching for life in D.C., even though it's not technically a federal issue anymore, but we're still marching. I want to know why. So somebody enlighten me on why there's a march in D.C. for the March for Life when Roe's gone. You should be marching at all your state houses big time on this. There should be all kinds of pro-lifers at your state house trying to get this done, because all the enemies are focusing on the state house, and they're all saying, "Oh, we're going to get the 51st vote to codify Roe." And then what are you going to do? And give me your excuse on not leaving if they end up coming in and codifying Roe and codifying same-sex marriage and all that other stuff. Tell me why you should stay in this voluntary tyrannical union. Is it because of the Olympics? Is it because you want 50 flags on the 50 stars on the flag? That the gates of hell was promised not to destroy the United States or America? Tell me why you want to stay in that. I'm asking just, I'm thinking family and up. If you want to beat this in the secular way, you got to get out. You got to change your mindset. And you got to get, as Don Livingston says, break it up and convert it. And no one talks about converting it.
Nope, not at all. There's a book out by Father Paul O'Sullivan. It's called "An Easy Way to Become a Saint," and it's a short book. It's a little book. I got it at the St. Benedict Center. I started reading it last night, not because Steve yelled at me to read more books, but just because I want to do so. And it talks about ordinary saints and extraordinary saints. Now we're all. We love our extraordinary saints. Saint Francis of Assisi, Saint Ignatius of Loyola, Saint Thomas Aquinas. Awesome. They're great. And I think Catholics tend to be like, they're doing the job for us, right? Our saints are Saint Teresa of Calcutta. They're the extraordinary ones. They're the example of God's authority and all the great things. And we kind of just, go along to get along. The book's actually really awesome because it talks about ordinary saints. And I forget the saint that did it. Saint Anthony, one of the Saint Anthony's, met these 2 women, and he was shocked at how he was told that they were saintly. He's like, "Well, how hard do you fast? How hard do you pray?" And they're like, "We observe the fast days. We go to church. We do our prayers, and we love God with everything we have." And he's like, "This is crazy," because he's doing all this other extraordinary stuff. But I think we have to get back to the fact that Fwaz, John, Steve, myself, watcher at home, we have such a huge impact as well. If we, it's okay to be an ordinary saint.
They got the story wrong. They
What?
actually tweeted out they were going to go pray and how long they were going to do it.
They
and
put it on
who might know
TikTok.
they were doing it and how they could pray for you to go.
That's right. They put it on TikTok under a hashtag, and then that's how they were able to do so. But I think you know, you were talking about that. Just, you know, simple books like that can reignite people's passion, especially Catholics, when all this stuff seems to be crushing. And I'm gonna try and get us to the next subject because I know we got to get out of here. But a lot of Catholics, trad or not trad, or, you know, the gym bros, the Catholic gym bros. Listen, we all got to, you know, work on our physical health, but a lot of them are focusing on that and not really focusing on the other half. And of course, you know, the stories of people who have been sickly and not doing well, still being perfect souls. So I think that was a great point, Steve. Let's move on to the next thing. He mentioned it. Biden says he's going to codify Roe if they keep Congress. So in one way or another, it speaks to maybe you should get involved in politics, maybe not, but B, also understand the kind of government that you know, has a Catholic at the head of it will do for you. So John, the idea, two parts. A, you know, we should participate in politics as much as we can because we don't want to leave the battlefield on that. But at the same time, looking at the fact that you know, even with a Catholic at the head of it, it doesn't mean that it's going to be completely perfect.
Yeah, and it really, the stories kind of just tell the whole story. There's really not too much I can add except to say that the old principle that the corruption of the best becomes the worst is evident here. So, you know, you've got so-called Catholic Biden in office, and then, you know, the other thing is, even if all of the other worst leaders throughout the U.S., especially, really throughout the world, if you look at Western Europe, especially, even if they're not themselves Catholic, the ones that are really horrible are in these very predominantly Catholic countries. I mean, it's kind of odd too. Like, you think of two of the exceptions on most of the issues that are so important to a Catholic, moral issues at least. You're talking about basically a de facto, what it seems like, Protestant there in Bolsonaro in Brazil, and then well, other than Poland, then you got in Hungary, you have another Protestant who's kind of leading a moral charge, and Meloni, you know, de facto like a one who would call herself probably a bad Catholic. She loves it seems like, the much about the faith, but is not really living it. So those who would not hesitate to call themselves the Catholic, I'm very Catholic, like Pelosi. Those are the worst, you know. And so it just shows you that, and they've clearly all been taken over by that same diabolic spirit Saint Augustine describes so well in the City of God. So without that constant humility and really seeking not positions of power, and so not, and you could kind of use this on the thing that Steve's on us about most of the time, and that is looking at your local races. Don't try to go become a, you know, a senator or a representative or even a governor. Just go local, help out the local community there, and that's going to be the way you're going to do the most good for others around you. But these others that have gone for the high places, they're doing lots and lots of harm.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Flaws, the idea of voting, hoping, and coping, and all that kind of stuff. It really is a distraction for Catholics to put their politics, their religion can be based on their politics instead of their politics being based on their religion.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Jonathan said it so eloquently. I don't have much to add to that. Everyone's excited about the midterms, and I'm thinking to myself, wait, I don't think that the Democrats really have a chance to gain an extra 2 seats in the Senate, let alone they'll probably end up losing the Senate, maybe, or the House definitely. But so what? Who cares? You know what that's like? That's like saying, "Oh, I got new chains on my shackles, and it's a little bit longer, so I have more freedom to walk around." It's the same thing. You're putting your whole, I get hopium on these politicians. Who's going to save us? Lindsey Graham? I mean, give me a break. Who's going to Herschel Walker? It's all propaganda. I have an idea. Why don't we have Tim Scott or Rand Paul? Who I kind of like. Let's have another hearing so we can make Fauci feel uncomfortable for 15 minutes. What a win for us, right? So we can just go back just to write a policy because he has the power. It doesn't matter unless God removes these folks, and he's the only one who knows how to do that. And talking about Biden and Pelosi, Biden is sitting there talking about, I'm going to codify Roe. Where are the bishops? They were out there screaming, at Trump for a wall, but this guy talking about, I want to make it a national policy to murder children. Where are the bishops? Where are the cardinals against him? Nowhere to be found. You know why? Because Catholicism has been reduced to a social justice understanding and how to fix the world, and honestly, it's been watered down to such a degree. Now we can call Pelosi or Biden good Catholics. We can say, well, they're still Catholic, even though their moral policies don't match the moral understanding of the church. So where are the Catholics? I mean, there needs to be a standard that is much higher than me just saying, hey, I'm Catholic. You don't self-identify as a Catholic. It's a life. It's who you are. It's what you practice. We have a creed, for God's sake. It's not just identifying as one. You've got to live as one. And the standard has been so low that you can call him Catholic. People can call themselves Catholic, even though they don't have to prove it one way or another, or conform themselves to actual teachings of the church. And that's what lies the problem, I think. There's no face of Catholicism that can really say, you got to do this in order to be Catholic. The standard is so low.
Yeah, I think that the point you brought up earlier about not having a face or somebody you can rely on, like a Bishop John Dagger, Dagger John, the bishop in New York during the riots in the 1840s, who commanded the AOH, which I'm going to say, but if you don't know him, talk about, look it up, the AOH, to pretty much defend Catholic churches in the face of Catholic bigotry. He told him, he's like, if one Catholic church is touched, I'm burning the entire place down.
Right.
Could you imagine a bishop today saying something like, being like, if you put one COVID jab in any of my parishioners, it's going to be bad for you? No, it's more of the get along to make sure they get the funding. Remember, there was those articles about they got PP funding or whatever, the COVID funding for the churches when they shut down. They got the funding for it. So they're always going around. And that's why they didn't like the wall was, because all, Catholic what is it? One of the Catholic relief services, they make over 50% of their money comes from the federal government for immigration relocation. So they'll watch Biden, they'll watch Pelosi. And if somebody says, we're going to get rid of this or that, or like Steve, let's bring this next one up. We'll finish the show up with this, talking about transgenderism in the womb. Where are the bishops? Silent, because it's a choice.
Patients that we have in the GEMS clinic actually know their gender, usually around the age of puberty, but a good portion of children do know as early as seemingly from the womb, and they will usually express their gender identity as very young children, some as soon as they can talk. They say phrases such as I'm a girl, or I'm a boy, or I'm going to be a woman, or I'm going to be a mom. Kids know very, very early. So in the GEMS clinic, we see a variety of young children all the way down to ages 2 and 3, and usually up to the ages of 9. When they come into the clinic, they'll see one of our psychologists, and we'll be talking to them about their gender. We'll be talking to their family about how to best support that child and how to make sure that that child has the space and support to explore their gender and do well throughout their development. And we'll be answering any parent questions. A lot of parents do have questions, and so we answer those questions. The biggest piece of advice I give parents who are coming through the gender clinic at Boston Children's Hospital is to just be supportive. Sometimes you might not understand. Sometimes you feel like you don't know the terms, or you don't kind of get exactly what the child means when they say that they might be this gender. But the biggest thing you can do is just love your child and support them.
Love your child and whack off their bits because they're
not a human, right?
But the funny part is I thought babies in the womb aren't human. They don't know anything. They can't think, and all of a sudden, according to these people, they know what gender they are in the womb, and Kari can decide, oh, I'm not that one, I'm this one. Or
it's like, it pretty much is a gun to your head. You're a boy now. No, I'm not. Abort him. Right? You're going to be a boy now, sucker, or you're going to be a girl. If not, we're going to abort you. So as much as I'm making light of it, Steve, it's just medical tyranny, whether it's COVID now, this pseudoscience. I guess we're moving at the speed of science now, Steve. Kids can discover this stuff, before the womb even is, when they're just a peanut.
well, Corey brought this up about medical tyranny. And it's how the parallels from 9/11 to now. You see that with, just now it's global, and it goes back to totalitarianism. We're people that just have no problem being told what to do, slap the whip on us, and go about it or get fired. And just to see now, you're still seeing people wearing muzzles, and you're going, why? Or, like going into the hospital with me when, for the birth of the kid, and more people are upset about the mask than anything. Or we're still playing this game. Why? And when does it stop? And as everyone keeps saying, this stops when you, I, and everyone else start saying this is enough. And what it's going to take. I don't think it's good. I think it's going to keep on going. Just like I said about states, it's going to be more protest states by the end of the year, end of the decade, than pro-life states. It starts out good. We got rid of Roe, but it's not going to last. We're already too comfy as it is. We don't have the fire. We don't have the will to go at the win, to go get that, take the crown, as it says. They do. They have the will to do it. They want it because it's their baby, literally. No pun intended. It's killing babies. Their baby. That's their favorite thing. That's all they're talking about. Kamala's bringing it up. Biden's bringing it up. Everybody that's running for office is bringing it up. So all they care about is killing kids. And you're not here, as for a while it's brought up, where you bring up a gate or a fence down at the Texas southern border, and everyone lost their minds. But you're talking about this literally every day. It's been talked about, and you don't hear really anyone batting their eye over it. There's no outcry. There's no, we gotta let's get a little synod together and talk about what's going on. No, none of that. We're just, ho hum. Okay, we'll see. Were we voting harder in November? Maybe. Again, it goes back to the March for Life. What have you guys been doing for the last few months? Figuring out who's speaking on what? Come up to DC to protest Roe that doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
We're getting speakers calling out Roe that doesn't exist anymore. Am I nuts? I mean, I've had a couple of these in the last couple of days. I mean, tell me why there's a March for Life in DC? Yeah, money.
You got that sweet money.
Why are they bringing back into the feds? Money. Everything's revolved about money. Why are they running for abortion? Money. Why is the Democrats want abortion? Money. Why is the GOP wanting abortion? They want it. Money. It's all about money. And my wife even brought it up. Because how much these pro-lifers lost since Roe went down? There's a lot to that. They're like, what are we going to do now? Belmont Abbey had a thing. I don't know if they talked about, hey, let's get rid of it locally. I mean, everyone's kind of like, what do we do now? Seriously, what was the game? I remember talking to St. Paul Street Institute once, and this ain't throwing them under the bus or anything, but I sent them the channel, and I said, hey, you guys ever thought about helping promote this? As whoever you get come in, send them to this. Maybe they'll learn a lot more during it, because they get catechism, Bible studies, etc. Goes, oh wow, we never thought about that. We never thought about what step 2 is. I'm going, how do you put something together and not know, hey, when this happens, then this is going down. Then this is going. That's a business model. How do we not have that mindset? Like, why do we go out and evangelize? Well, because we're told to. But what do you do when they want to know more? We haven't thought about that.
Yeah.
Hey, come up for the march, though. Spend your money.
Buy a t-shirt.
Reasons.
Flaz, your thoughts on that, Saint and Cry Room, and then I know you got to get out.
Yeah, no, my final thoughts, Steve, I think you're absolutely right. While we're still marching in D.C. for absolutely zero reason, Michigan is about to pass Prop 3, which was literally written by demons. And they're going to pass it this November. Whitmer's going to win re-election. So what did you change? So what are we're going to be 0-3 with the states, 0-2 because Kansas passed it. Michigan's going to pass it. We're hosting galas. We're popping champagne. It kind of reminds me of remember the movie Hook with Robin Williams?
Yep.
While he's laughing at the gala, Hook's coming in and taking the kids away. Mm-hmm. That's what we're doing. We're still celebrating while the left is going into the homes, and they're about to pass Prop 3 in Michigan. Look that up. Prop 3 is horrible. Now, not only is it on abortion, but it's also on kids transgender. If you deny your child, or if he says he's a girl, and you deny it, you have the right to be taken away from you. They're about to pass that, but we're marching in D.C. to stop something that we already stopped a few months ago. It's ridiculous. We're a joke. So my saint of the week is going to actually I'm going to go with the choir room. I still gotta go back to what's her name, AOC. She got heckled again by our constituents, and she's dancing. This is how you know somebody has lost reality, has kept power, and she knows she's not going anywhere because she lives in a very small district that is completely left. She knows she's going to win re-election, and she's going to be in there for the long run. So she doesn't care what her constituents think.
Yep.
So I put her in the choir room because, again, what does she have to lose? She's going to hold on to power because people are too brainwashed to understand that she's not on this side.
Listen, okay.
That is such a fake accent, by the way. I live with a beautiful Latina woman. When she gets mad, she does not go into like Rosie Perez mode.
You're right.
So
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Wes. Go ahead.
No, you're up. No, thanks for showing the video. It's just to show you that what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with narcissists who don't care about you whatsoever. They just care about holding on to power. And again, if we had virtuous men and women in this country, we wouldn't elect people who don't care about you. So again, I go back to virtue. It's always the case. My saint of the week. I'm gonna go with Father Rip. And because I know him personally, and I talk to him almost on a daily basis, and the kind of stuff that man is put through, and the stuff that he's doing for souls on just such a small local basis, and also the fact that he's changed hearts and minds of young men to become better husbands and fathers across the country. I cannot but tip my hat off to him and the work that he's doing. He fasts for the sake of souls. He's always laboring for the sake of souls. So I got to put him in there. Because I don't think he gets enough credit. Sometimes he gets criticized by some folks unfairly, and we have to appreciate good priests. We have to appreciate good priests because we want more of them, not put them down and think that he's like just another James Martin. So I'll put him on there.
Yep.
Oh yeah,
Life changing. Incorporated into daily prayers, man. Life changing in that regard.
Beautiful.
Just awesome. I guess that's Steve's cry room is the March for Life.
I gotta head out, guys. God bless you.
Thank you. Thanks for hanging out with the Fawaz. God bless. So who do you got, Steve?
Seen earlier were created by AI.
Yes.
So even the creative jobs are not safe. And it's sometimes our intuitions about what humans do good and what computers and robots do good, they're not necessarily true. For instance, manual jobs are much, much harder to automate in many cases than purely intellectual jobs.
Yes.
It's much easier if you take, healthcare. Doctors, there are all kinds of doctors, but doctors who basically just analyze data, they get the results of my medical tests and they diagnose a disease and they recommend a treatment. This is the easiest thing to automate. In contrast, the job of a nurse who needs to replace a bandage, who needs to give a vaccine to a crying child, this is much more difficult. We are going to have AI doctors long before we have AI nurses or robot nurses.
And my saint, who would be a saint of the week? I'll go with Father Abernathy since he's doing the podcast. He's done hundreds of podcasts. Go check it out. I'll link it in the show notes, but it's philokalia.podbean.com. He's doing the Ladder of Divine Ascent. He's already done Cassian. He does a lot of the Desert Fathers. And since Jonathan isn't here to throw his own in there, I'm going to go with the CDC in the cry room so we can get a foursome out of this because of the idea of what they're doing, what they're pushing through.
Okay. My cry room is going to be the NHL because the NHL has now decided that it is too white, and they have now brought in a diversity.
Is the ice going to be black now, or is it?
Apparently, you need to make sure that there's black people in hockey, and if the problem with that is it's so dang expensive. I'll send this to you, Steve. You can play it for everybody. Where they said, well, we did this internal review, and we found that we're just really white in the NHL. And everybody was like, well, no kidding. What did you think the assessment was going to be? And it's the problem like what the NFL has gone through and Major League Baseball has gone through. They've run out of fans. They got too greedy. They got too gluttonous. They wanted more. They wanted more TV money. They wanted more fans in stands. The problem is that the fans are stretched too thin. And prices for NASCAR, and Major League Baseball, NFL, it's too expensive. So you got to pick one. And so what did these places do? Just like NASCAR went out from the burbs, not the burbs, from the rural areas into the cities to try and get more fans, and they spit in their face. They're like, we're not watching this redneck stuff. The NHL is not going to make any money that they think they're going to make trying to appeal to newer fans, this newer base of people that they have this imaginary idea that they're going to be able to do so. And so for them, I'm going to put her in the cry room.
We are where we expected to be, but now we have the facts to back it up. I think the one area that we are feeling positive about is that 38% of our workforce are women. We've done a lot of work to improve in that area, and it's very consistent with our current female fan base of 40%, and so that's a great benchmark. Having said that, we know we have work to do with women of color, and we're leaning into that. I think the thing that you should take away from the workforce study is that it is a progressive outlook on how you begin to manage your talent. And it is progressive in that it's a self-identified report. So of our 4,200, approximately 4,200 employees across the league and the club, 67% of our employees participated in it, and this is how they self-identified.
I remember Paul Joseph Watson talking about that, saying that the problem with the English soccer, everyone was upset the English soccer team being predominantly white, but he goes, no one's ever complains about the African teams.
Right? No, whatever. This is just it's greed. It's flat out greed. They don't have enough people in the stands. They want more, so they're going to appeal to these people. They don't want to watch your sport. Hockey is a tough sport at the ground level to try and get kids involved in because it's very expensive and it's very time consuming and it's very niche. Most of the players in the NHL are from Sweden, Croatia, Russia, Canada, and like Minnesota, which I guess Minnesota is a country now on its own anyway. But it's not going to work. But hey, got to keep chasing that money. And my saint of the week, I'm gonna be pretty much standard. I'm gonna say Yeezy for speaking out. Whatever you believe, at least the guy, he's standing up and trying to speak out for what he believes in, despite cancelizations. Now, apparently, he's going to buy Parler because another billionaire owning a social media company. I almost put him in the cry room for that, but the NHL was worse. So I'm going to make him my saint of the week because he's making the right people upset, and someday he'll be a great Catholic, I think. So let's pray for his conversion and for him to come to, because he's saying a lot of stuff that is in line with Catholic principle. He just needs to kind of get there. So continue to pray for his conversion, along with the conversion of all those, Whitlock, Trump, all those guys to come over to the faith. We want them all here because we want all souls saved. All right, folks, that is it for this week's News from the Pew. Like, subscribe, and share the News from the Pew. I'm your host, Rick Barrett, and now, always, and forever, Viva Cristo Rey.